think there was some request for me to repeat a verse from Nagarjuna that I mentioned earlier. And it was to do with these idea of the two extremes and how emptiness and dependent arising are like two sides of a coin. And the verse was from Nagarjuna from chapter 24, verse 18 of his text. He says, "That which arises dependently and relatedly is explained as being empty. And that which is empty is dependently designated." This is the middle way path. So basically saying that emptiness and dependent arising, or emptiness and functioning a world, are two sides of a coin. And understanding this is the middle way view between the two extremes of existence and non-existence. What I'd like to do in this session to begin with is to do an emptiness meditation, a sort of a classic approach to emptiness meditation in terms of searching for me, the person. And one or two comments before we go to that practice is, and then there's discussion this morning about the mountain. In fact, it reminded me of a Zen saying. And the Zen saying is, first there's a mountain, then there's no mountain, and then there's a mountain again. Of course, the first and last mountain is not the same mountain. So first there's a mountain means we think there's a mountain there existing independently of us. But then if we investigate that, we'll come to realize there is no independent mountain, so therefore no mountain. And through realizing that, then subsequent to that, we'll realize that the mountain only exists within the conceptual framework. So then there's a merely labeled mountain. So that's what it means. First there's a mountain, then there's no mountain, and then there's a mountain. And so what we can understand from that is that to really appreciate that the mountain only exists within our conceptual framework, first we really need to realize the emptiness of the mountain. And that's what it said in the texts, is that it's through the realization that nothing exists independently, through realizing emptiness, through that realization, then subsequent to that in daily life, we'll see or realize that everything is merely labeled. And so therefore, in this emptiness practice that we're going to do now, the emptiness meditation, we're going to look for the me that seems to be here and see if we can find it. This independent me that seems to be here. And so then in this or any sort of emptiness practice, we are to search for the me or the object that we're looking for, the one that seems to be there. And this is often where people go astray in this practice, is that when they do start doing the search, instead of looking for the me that seems to be here, the independent me, they turn it into an intellectual exercise. And then, of course, we always find something. And what we find is based on our belief system. So, of course, if we've studied some Buddhism and we understand that things are merely labelled, or another thing we often hear in Buddhism is that it's the subtle mental continuum that goes from life to life. That's what we often hear. So then when we look, we see this sort of mental continuum, we go, ah, there it is, I see it, it's me. Ah yes, I'm subtle mental continuum. Or if we've studied some other systems, and some of the sort of more New Age type traditions often talk about the fact that everything in the universe is subtle vibration, subtle energy. And then of course we look in the body, we see some subtle vibrations, and we go, oh yeah, there it is, there's me. Subtle vibration, good. But then we've just turned it into an intellectual exercise. Because I can guarantee that when we get angry at someone, we're not identifying with subtle energy or subtle mental continuum as the me that's angry. So therefore, we need to look. First, we need to get a really clear picture of this me that really seems to be here, this independent me, and then look for that me. And we'll do the meditation now, and then after the meditation I'd like to explain the sort of the steps of the practice so we have that clear in our mind. But let's do the practice first. Setting the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. Relaxing more deeply with each out-breath. And setting the mind in a state of ease and relaxation. Simply allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment. Simply becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. Now, do you have a sense that there is a me here who is meditating? A me who is relaxing the body and focusing the mind on the breath. A me that seems to exist from its own side and doesn't seem to depend upon anything else to exist. Do you have this experience? Where is this me who's meditating here? Can the meditator be found anywhere? So first thoroughly search the body and look for the me who is meditating. Search every part of the body. Is the meditator to be found somewhere inside the head? Is the brain, is that the me who's meditating? Or is the brain simply something which I possess? Something which me, the meditator, is using? Is the whole body itself, is that the me who is meditating here? Or is the whole body itself merely something which I have? Something which me, the meditator, is trying to relax? Can me, the meditator, be found anywhere within the mind? So again, search thoroughly every part of the mind and look for the me who's meditating. Are any of the thoughts, emotions, or concepts in the mind, are any of these the me who is meditating here? Or are thoughts, emotions and concepts merely things which I have, things which me, the meditator, possesses? Is the whole mind itself? Is that the me who's meditating here? Or is the whole mind itself merely something I have? Something which me, the meditator, is using to focus on the breath? Is the combination of the body and the mind, is that the me who's meditating here? Or is the combination of the body and the mind merely two things which I have? Two things which me, the meditator, is trying to train? Yet, other than the body and the mind, what else is there here? There's nothing more than the body and the mind here, then where is the me that possesses this body and mind and is trying to train this body and mind? Where is me, the meditator? If you can't find that me, simply rest in the experience of not finding. And even if you didn't find the me, isn't there someone who's experiencing all of this? So there is me here meditating. But how can it exist if we don't seem to be able to find it? The me exists as something merely labelled on the body and the mind. The merely labelled me is sitting here meditating. And then release all appearances and simply allow the mind to come to rest. Not doing anything at all. Simply resting in awareness itself. So let's have a look at the structure of that meditation before some questions. When this idea of emptiness is presented in the texts, normally they use a physical object to establish the view of emptiness. In fact, in Chandrakirti, he's a 6th century Indian master, and often in the Tibetan tradition, when we study emptiness, we study his text. Chandrakirti, in his text, when he's establishing emptiness, he uses a chariot or a cart as the example. And he says, okay, there's a chariot or cart. Can you find it there somewhere? And he proceeds to pull it apart and say, is this the chariot? Is this the chariot? Is this the chariot? Pulling it apart and says, well, there's no chariot to be found there. So you're using a physical object to understand that you can't find things in the basis, that they don't exist independently. But when it comes to meditating on the view of emptiness, it's usually recommended that we start with me, the person. Because this is where the process starts to go wrong. We're grasping onto independent me, and then by default grasping onto independent world. And me, the person, is something very familiar with us. And we can investigate this me in a number of ways. And one classic way of investigating was the one we just did in that meditation. And this is described or presented using a presentation called the 4 essential points. And here I'll use terminology that His Holiness Dalai Lama uses in one of his books called How to See Yourself as You Really Are. This is the book I usually recommend in the beginning stages to start to understand something about emptiness and dependent arising. It's very clearly written, and there are some meditation exercises in the end of every chapter. And in there he talks about these 4 essential points. And the first step he calls identifying the target. The technical term often used here in the texts is identifying the object of negation. This is the most important step